want you to take a look at the person on your left. Maybe give them a smile. And now look at the person to your right. Maybe give them a little wave. Now, when I ask you if you can tell me if that person's been through something traumatic in their life, I'm guessing you would answer no. According to the National Center for Mental Well-Being, more than 70% of adults in the United States have experienced some sort of traumatic event in their life. That's a whopping 223.4 million people. Now, this traumatic event swimming inside of us could be witnessing a loved one die, or getting involved in a motor vehicle accident, or something like serving in active combat or experiencing a sexual assault. This trauma is often considered the silent scream because we very much know it's there and we can feel it and we can hear it, but others can't see it and they can't hear it. And sometimes we're not even willing to talk about it. Now, that we know that experiencing a traumatic event is actually a part of the majority, let's deconstruct how our brain interprets and responds to traumatic stimuli. Our brain's job, first and foremost, is to ensure our survival and alert us of any danger. And our brain is really good at detecting danger, sometimes a little too much. And that's because of something called the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, or the HTPA-Access for short. This is our brain and body's stress response system that governs our fight or flight response. Imagine you're walking through the forest and you can hear the leaves rustling behind you. You can feel that nice summer breeze. I know, that's nice right now. And then all of a sudden, you see a bear. Automatically, your hypothalamus is sending signals to your pituitary gland, which is then sending signals to your adrenal gland. Your adrenal gland is saying, all right, rally the troops. We need stress hormones, cortisol, norepinephrine, epinephrine, and glucose. And your eyes begin to dilate. Your heart starts to thump in your chest, and you are now ready to fight that bear, or you're ready to run from that bear, or sometimes we freeze in front of that bear. Now, this is really good if you're in a forest and there's a bear. But the problem begins when the bear follows us home. Our trauma follows us home, and we're reliving that every single day. Now, according to Dr. Vince Vitale of Kaiser University and Dr. Bob Anbo of the CDC, people who experience trauma are 4 times more likely to develop chronic health issues because of this. And this is because our HTP-Access is heightened activity, and our stress response system becomes something that is adaptive and health-saving to something that is maladaptive and health-compromising. Now, in normal situations, a part of our brain called the thalamus regulates incoming sensory information, and it acts as a gatekeeper or a filter. And this makes it a central component to new learning and concentration. Well, in people with trauma, they're lacking that filter, and the floodgates are wide open to all sorts of sensory stimuli. This means that their sensory system is completely overwhelmed and sensitized to everything around them. In order to cope, that person begins to develop hyperfocus, and they shut down to the world around them. Now, in 1994, Dr. Scott Rauch performed a study using radioactive oxygen and fMRI machines. This was to measure any one part of the brain becoming more or less metabolically active. Now, after just 8 participants and inducing an anxiety-provoking stimuli, Rauch noticed 3 major changes in our brains. The first was heightened activity in our right hemisphere. This hemisphere of our brain stores sensory information like touch, smell, and the emotions that they evoke. And it's also responsible for hosting memories like faces, facial features, gestures, voices, and places we've been in the past. And under normal circumstances, our left and right brain are communicating with each other so we can organize our experiences. But with heightened activation in our right brain and decreased activation in our left brain, we are now unable to organize our experiences into logical sequences. Along with this, we have deactivation in our left brain's speech center, or our Broca's area. We are unable to produce logical sentences that describe our experiences. And this proves consistent with the difficulty survivors present when asked to retell or recall their painful stories. And when words fail in the heightened activation of our right brain, we have painful images flooding our brain's visual center. And these images act as a sort of facade, and they blind survivors to the reality around them. Now, I was interested in seeing the effects primarily on students. Students are particularly sensitive to this repeated stress activation because our brains, they're still developing. So with our sensory systems overwhelmed, it creates problems with the way our brain functions and the way it's structured, also in the ways our defense system works in our body, our immune defense system, and the way our DNA is read and transcribed. Now, whether you're a professor or a parent or a sibling of a student, or maybe you guys are students yourself, we have to consider these effects of trauma on our next generation of teachers, of parents, of social workers, our future. Now, according to the National Sexual Assault Resource Center, 1 in 4 women and 1 in 6 men will be sexually assaulted in their lifetime. And if you don't know a 1 in that 4, you have a 1 standing right in front of you tonight. After my assault, almost everything about school seemed impossible. But instead of maladaptive coping strategies like drugs and alcohol, I decided to hyper-focus on my work. Now, this created such intense anxiety, panic attacks, and crippling self-doubt anytime I produced a grade below a 90. And this is because the professors who had become my family, I thought they were going to be so disappointed in the juvenile work I had just given them. Along with this, I had very severe reactions to seemingly mild stimuli around me. And this included people breathing too loudly, people chewing too loudly, or people moving too quickly near me. And on top of all of this, I had to face my assailant every single day. I had to share classes with him. I had to see him in the halls, and I even shared an internship with him. I was reliving my trauma every single day. So, I think as institutions, we should not only be screening students for trauma, but we should be educating them about the effects it has on their bodies. They should be playing an active role in their treatment and recovery. Trauma should be treated the way doctors treat asthma, diabetes, or a broken bone. Eye movement desensitization reprocessing theory, or EMDR therapy, is a top-of-the-line, trauma-oriented, and intensive therapy. This therapy targets a memory that we have, and it pairs it with bilateral eye movement, which triggers our sensory systems. It is said that EMDR therapy has a direct biological impact on us. And since we all share the same nervous system, results are fairly predictable. And the most exciting thing about EMDR therapy is its success rate. Dr. Francine Shapiro, the inventor and innovator of EMDR therapy, reports an upwards of 85% success rate with just 5 sessions. Now, if you experience multiple traumas or more intense traumas, your therapy is going to last longer, but it's not going to last years like traditional CBT therapy. And this is because EMDR is present-oriented and memory-specific. Now, when I found out about EMDR and I went through EMDR, I went from a student who was withdrawn, anxious, and unsocial to a student who produced one of the most successful food drives SUNYPotsdam has seen to this date. I went from a student who couldn't socialize and didn't think I had what it took to be a master's student. I am now a PhD student at one of the top research institutes in the United States. I lead classes of 150 undergraduate students. I thought clinicians would be jumping from the rooftops. I thought that they would be on a race to develop the most effective treatment for their clients. But it's not like that at all. Dr. Nadine Burke says that adverse life events are actually one of the first and most unaddressed public health threats that the United States faces today. The scope of this problem is almost too big to look at. However, I just planted a seed in all of you tonight. And seeds turn into saplings, and saplings turn into redwood trees that turn into the forests in California. Take the seed that I have given you tonight and help me plant this forest from east to west. Help me innovate a better system to treat trauma in our students. Thank you.